What if I told you today's Middle East chaos began with broken promises and secret deals crafted by men who never stepped foot on its soil? In this video, we'll trace the roots of modern Middle Eastern conflict all the way back to World War I and expose the real reasons behind the decisions that redrew this volatile region. From hidden imperial agendas to betrayal of allies, every modern crisis, from Iraq to Palestine, can be traced to a war fought thousands of miles away. What happened, and why did they do it? Stick around, this is a story of ambition, oil, power, and the scars of empire. In 1914, Europe plunged into a global war. But this wasn't just about the trenches of France, it became a war of empires. The Ottoman Empire, once mighty, now crumbling, joined Germany and Austria-Hungary against Britain, France, and Russia. The Middle East became a chessboard, and for the British and French, it wasn't about peace. It was about power, trade, oil, and control of empire. The Ottoman Empire controlled vast Arab lands, but it was weak and unstable. Britain and France knew it would collapse eventually, and they were preparing to pick up the pieces. But why did they care so much? Strategic position. The Ottoman lands connected Europe, Africa, and Asia. Whoever controlled the Middle East could control global trade routes, especially the Suez Canal. Oil. By the early 1900s, oil was becoming more valuable than gold. Controlling Iraq's oil-rich lands was key to fueling Britain's navy and expanding French industry. Colonial competition. France and Britain were rivals. Both wanted to expand their global empires and prevent the other from gaining too much. The Ottoman collapse presented the perfect opportunity. As the war dragged on, Britain needed help defeating the Ottomans. That's when they turned to Sharif Hussein of Mecca, the spiritual leader of the Arab world. They promised Hussein an independent Arab kingdom in exchange for leading a revolt against the Ottomans. But why promise him that? Manpower. Britain needed local fighters to destabilize the Ottoman interior. Distraction. An Arab revolt would force the Ottomans to fight on more fronts. Cheap victory. By using Arab fighters, Britain could reduce its own war casualties and spending. The Hussein McMahon correspondence laid out vague promises of Arab independence. But, intentionally, the borders were left unclear. Why? Because Britain never intended to keep those promises. They just needed Hussein to believe he would rule. While Arabs were fighting and dying, the British and French were secretly negotiating how to divide the Middle East without any Arab input. This was the Sykes-Picot Agreement, 1916. Britain would get modern-day Iraq, southern Palestine and Jordan. France would get Syria and Lebanon. Why did they do this? Imperial expansion. Britain and France saw the Middle East as free real estate after 200 the Ottoman collapse. Prevention of Russian influence. They feared Russia would dominate the region if they didn't act fast. Post-war advantage. Both powers wanted to be in the strongest position once the war ended, controlling trade routes, resources, and military zones. To them, the Middle East wasn't about freedom or loyalty. It was about power projection. In 1917, Britain added another layer to the confusion by issuing the Balfour Declaration, promising to support a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Why did Britain do this? Gain Jewish support. Britain hoped the declaration would win support from Jewish-like countries and communities in the US and Russia, both vital allies in the war effort. Create a friendly buffer zone. A Jewish state in Palestine could act as a loyal British ally in a volatile region. Undermine the Ottomans. Encouraging Jewish immigration would help weaken Ottoman and Arab influence in Palestine. Again, this promise contradicted the earlier promise made to Hussein. Britain was promising the same land to two different people because it saw short-term political gain in both. When the war ended in 1918, the Ottoman Empire was gone. But instead of granting freedom, Britain and France took direct control of the region under the League of Nations mandates. Why? Access to oil. Iraq had vast oil reserves, and the British made sure to take it. Protecting India. For Britain, controlling the Middle East meant securing routes to India, the jewel of its empire. Economic recovery. After World War I, both countries were broke. Colonies meant resources and revenue. The borders they drew were based on European convenience, not local culture, religion, or history. Let's look at how these decisions caused decades of unrest. Why was Iraq created? Britain needed a buffer state between its interests in India and potential threats like Iran or Russia. The British also needed access to Basra's oil fields and the Persian Gulf. They combined 3 Ottoman provinces, Baghdad, Mosul, and Basra, into one country, ignoring ethnic and religious differences. The result? Sunni leaders ruled over Shia majorities. Kurds in the north were ignored. The monarchy was pro-British and seen as illegitimate. This Frankenstein state led to military coups, the rise of Saddam Hussein, decades of war and sanctions. France's control of Syria and Lebanon was driven by long-standing missionary and trade ties, a desire to compete with Britain, access to the Mediterranean coast. They divided Syria into smaller regions to weaken Arab nationalism. But this only fueled anger and rebellion. Syria would experience Britain-controlled Palestine for strategic reasons. It was near the Suez Canal. It was central to trade and empire. It had growing Jewish immigration, seen as politically useful. But by supporting both Arab and Jewish claims, Britain ignited a conflict that never ended. When they finally withdrew in 1948, war exploded. The result? Creation of Israel, Palestinian refugee crisis, endless Arab-Israeli wars, ongoing global political tension. The real reason for all of this wasn't religion, culture, or liberation. It was power and profit. Britain and France didn't care about Arab independence. They didn't care about Jewish safety. They cared about trade routes, oil pipelines, military advantage, and empire. They used promises like weapons, and when they got what they wanted, they tossed those promises aside. The result? A region designed to be unstable because chaos was easier to control than unity. The modern Middle East wasn't born from natural history. It was engineered. Engineered in secret meetings by European diplomats, with little care for the people living there. Today, we're still living with that legacy. Every war, every protest, every power vacuum, it all stems from a moment when global empires put their needs first. To understand today's Middle East, we have to stop asking what's wrong with them and start asking what was done to them.